Hi guys, welcome back to our channel, Little Tap.
Hey guys, let's look at what we're going to build today. Today we're going to use a program called Scratch to build fractals. If you don't know what Scratch is, it's a language based on building blocks that kids can use to start to learn coding. Let's see what this program does. Cool, so it generates a fractal. To get started, let's look at a little bit of background. So what is a fractal? A fractal is a geometric pattern that can be zoomed in to infinity. It means that you can break apart a larger image into smaller and it will still look similar to the original. You can break it over and over and over again and it will never stop. So in the example that we have here, this triangle is broken down into 1, 2, 3, 4 other triangles, and then those triangles are broken down into 4 triangles, and so on and so forth. A good example of a fractal is the Mandelbrot sequence. Let's take a look at this. This is pretty neat. So in this example, we're zooming in and zooming in and zooming in. This can be done to infinity. So let's talk about a specific type of fractal. There's one called Sierpinski's triangle, and it looks like this. Sierpinski lived until 1969 and is important because he helped keep interest in mathematics through World War I and World War II. During his study in number theory, he came up with the mathematical interpretation of a repeating triangle pattern. This pattern of repeating triangles has actually been seen in prior artwork and clothing design, but his work described it mathematically. As you can see in this picture, it's definitely a fractal because you can infinitely zoom in on it and you see a similar pattern. So let's get started. Let's take a look at how this is made. Hey guys, we're going to go ahead and build the Sierpinski's triangle from scratch here, in Scratch. So what Evie's done is she picked a sprite, and it was a unicorn. And so the first thing we can do is we're going to be using the pen and not sprites. So there's a little eyeball next to the show, and we can turn it off by doing the one that's crossed through. Awesome, so we have a blank screen now. And what we're going to use in this program is a add-on to Scratch. There's a little add-on thing in the bottom left. Do you want to push that, Evie? And we want to use the pen. And it's basically like a pencil or a pen that we'll use to draw dots on the screen. We need to set up 2 variables. So go under Variables. No, not my variable. Click Make a Variable. And call one X. Hit enter, or OK. Then we need to see your X over here. And now we need one called Y. Can you make one called Y? Stop doing that because it's going to show in the video. Okay, and then we need a variable called Move. Can you make one called Move? M-O-V-E. Okay, that'll be used to move the triangle around left and right and up and down. And we only need one more variable. Can you make a variable? And we'll call it Size. And that'll be used to control the size of the triangle, kind of like the size of the sprite. S-I-Z-E. And that's okay. So we can start our program now. In Scratch, we start out with what, Ev?
When green flag clicked.
Yep. Let me start our program. So everything starts with that green flag. You push on that.
Not everything, just most things.
Okay. Now what we'll do is we need to make a block. A block is our own code that we can write. So do you see the red? It says make my blocks. And you can say make a block, just like a variable.
Make a block.
This one we'll call init. I-N-I-T. I-N. I-T. And hit OK. So what we're going to do with init is, so that's the definition. We can just leave it there. We don't need to do anything with it. But we can pull init on under our one click. So it'll call that. And we won't fill that out right now, but what that'll do is set some of those variables that we just created.
Next one is this.
Well, so then we want to do a loop. And the next part is a loop. And you usually do a forever loop, but we're going to do a repeat loop. Can you find a repeat loop? And this will be what's going through and plotting all the triangle fixes.
Correct.
Yep. And then instead of 10, can you make it this giant number? 100,000.
How many O's?
So click in there. It's got 5 zeros. Did you get it clicked in? There. So put 4. Yep. So 1 and then 5 zeros.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's good. So hit enter. Cool. So this is basically gonna set some variables and repeat a bunch. Now, what we can do is let's skip down to set pen color. And pop it in our loop. So we're going to do a fancy color scheme. It's actually called X mod 100. So the color can go from 0 to 100, but we have a variable here going
1,000,000 and
yeah, X, it's actually X, but it's going to be a pretty large number, so we're going to mod it. So let's go to our math operator. And we can choose a math function.
This one.
Called mod. Do you see mod? Can you pull that over and replace the 50 with it? Put it in right where that 50 is. Cool. And then we just need a variable. Go to variables. And we'll use our X variable. You can drag it into the first circle. Yep. And then under the other one, can you put 100?
Y.
No, not Y. Put 100 under the other circle. You can type 100, just like a calculator. 100. Yeah, cool. And then hit enter. A triangle that's one color is pretty boring, isn't it? So we're going to change the color to make it really pretty with this function. Now the next thing we have to do is the pen, or under motion, go to XY, and it's this one right here. And that'll go to a particular place on the screen. Drag it right underneath, or right underneath the color. We're going to tell the program to go to X and Y. Can you put the variables X and Y in there? X, Y. And then what we're going to do, how are we going to make a mark? We put our pen down. So that pen, well, that's erase all. Go to pen. So our pen needs to go down to make a mark. So you see pen down. And then we need pin up, because if we don't lift our pin up, we're just going to draw zigzags all over the screen. So you see pin up. Yeah. Put it under, pin down.
Pin up and then pin down.
Yeah. Well, pin up and pin down isn't going to work. Can we switch the order?
No. We need to destroy it.
Hold on. Now, since we lifted our pin up, basically we made a dot, right? We just did pin down, pin up, dot, dot. So what this is trying to do is make 100,000 dots. Can you imagine that? The only other thing we have to do is we need to change the value of x and y, because they're going to be really tiny when they get... Oh, we forgot to do our get xy. Okay, so let's go to my blocks. Can you go to my blocks?
These are all the blocks we made.
Let's create a new block. So make a block. And we have a function called get xy. And that's what's going to do all the crazy math to get our triangle. You say get xy. And then hit enter, or hit OK. Awesome, so we want to put that at the beginning of our loop, so right under the repeat. Can you drag get xy under the repeat? Up. There you go. Okay, so that's going to give you an x and y coordinate that we're going to apply, a new one each time. And we'll fill those in just a bit later. Next, the value that we get out of get xy is going to be very tiny, so we need to multiply it by a certain size variable, and then also to shift it on the screen, we'll move it by the move variable. So to do that, we're just going to add two more set statements. So we'll set x equal to, then we need a minus operator and a multiplication operator for the size. And so just grab our variables. Move is basically the translation variable, and the original x times the size that we want it to be. And then do the same thing for y. Set y, and I'll just grab this and just change out x to y. Okay. And then one other thing we want to do is, since the x and y dimensions are a little bit different, we multiply it by 0.5 to keep the triangle from looking a little bit lopsided. So we'll put a 0.5, and then we'll put y back in here. Okay, so all that's left is to define the init function and the get xy. Alright, let's go ahead and define the init, and it's just a function that's going to run when the program is started. It's going to define a couple variables, what their values are, and then erase the screen. So we'll start off and just set a few variables. We'll set move equal to 200, and we'll set size equal to 450. And then we need to set our initial values for XP and YP. And those are previous, they're going to stand for the previous value of X and Y. And finally, you just need to clear the screen. You can do that with the pin erase all function. So finally, let's go through the get XY function. Now this is what does all the math, and it's a little bit more complicated, but essentially it's just going to come back with an X and Y that we can plot up here. Sierpinski formula is based off of a random number, and it has 3 different conditions. So we're going to do a random number between 0 and 2. First of all, let's make a variable called random 1. And we need to set random 1 and then there's this pick a random value here. So we're going to go from 0 to 2. Okay. And then all we have to do is satisfy these conditions. So if random 1 equals 0, 1, and 2, and those are with control operators. Well, let's pop these in here. If, and what we're trying to say is if, go here to equals, and then if random 1 equals 0, that's one condition. We'll duplicate that. If random 1 equals 1, that's another condition. And if random 1 equals 2, that's the last condition. So these are basically just going to operate on the values of X and Y. And the last thing that we do is we want to save the values of X and Y, because this formula depends on the previous value of to calculate the new value. So what we'll do here is at the very bottom is do set. What we're trying to do is set XP equal to X and YP equal to X, or YP equal to Y. And that'll preserve the values for the next time that we run this function. Okay, and then all we have to do is satisfy these if conditions. So these are basically just formulas that we'll call to define the X and Y values. So we're basically, I'll start at the easiest one at the bottom here. And we're going to set X equal to something and Y equal to something. And all this rule says is that if X equals to half of XP, which is the previous value, so, and Y equals half of YP. So we can just do it 0.5, 0.5, and back to variables, XP, and YP. Cool. And then if the condition is equal to 1, we're going to do the same thing where we set X and Y. But this one, so this one's going to be y is going to be the same, so we can duplicate it. But x is going to be 0.5 times xp, or 0.5 times xp plus 0.5. So there's a plus and a times here. So we can grab our plus and our multiplication. And so this will be 0.5 plus 0.5 times xp. Okay, and then the only other condition here we to satisfy is if it's equal to 0. And this is a little bit more complicated because it has a square root, but it's the same idea here. So we'll do our set. In our set, we have an x and a y. And x is equal to 0.25 plus 0.5 times xp. So this is very similar to what we had before. We have a plus and a times. So 0.25, 0.5, and xp. And then y is equal to, same idea, a plus and a times. So we'll put our plus in and our times. And the times is 0.5 times yp. And the plus is two things. There's a division and a square root. So we want to put our division in. And it's divided by 4. And what's divided by 4? The square root of 3. So we could go over here and grab a square root operation. And pop it here. There we go. So now that we've filled all this out, one thing you want to do is go back to your variables, and you see that they're all displayed here. We can unselect them, and that'll take them off the screen for us. And then to run it, you want to hold down Shift and click on the green flag, and that'll put it in turbo mode because we're going to be doing a lot of graphics. And then when you hit run, let's see what happens. Awesome. And there's Sierpinski's triangle in Scratch.
Mix with like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.